Nick Smith Jr. And I'm going to be honest with you, like, this is a guy that obviously came in to college with really high pedigree, number one recruit in the class in some situations or from some services, and has fallen way down. I'm seeing a lot of people tell me, you know what, I'm a bit lower on Nick Smith than consensus. I'm not actually sure even where consensus sits on Nick Smith Jr. He's a combo guard from Arkansas, and again, I'm probably going to stop saying it. He's 19 years of age. He's a little bit younger than Jed. He's about 6 months younger. He's 6'5". You could see him going anywhere from the lottery to outside the top 20. But when we're looking at these stats, you can see on the screen, like, that's just horrific shooting numbers. So what happened? What happened from Nick Smith being a guy that, you know, from me, a casual observer of incoming high school classes, when I looked at this and went, yeah, oh, these guys coming in, man, we've got Scoot and Victor, obviously there's the Thompsons, there's Nick Smith. Yeah, he was in that group. We're not talking about it. So what happened? What went wrong?
So Nick Smith is another fascinating story in this draft class. And we just got done talking about Jet Howard, who suffered an injury that certainly affected his play. And to an extent, that's also what happened with Nick Smith, right? So Nick Smith came into the year recovering from an injury, was able to play about 5 games, really 3 games at full strength in terms of the minutes he played. And then he re-aggravated an injury, and then he was out again. And many thought, is this the end of what we're seeing from Nick Smith in terms of this season? Are we going to have to go into the pre-draft process closer into May and June with only about 5 college games at our disposal to watch? And then we'd have to lean more on the high school tape. Now, to his credit, he came back. He played in February and March when a lot of people thought he would sit. I give him credit for that. That shows competitive character. That shows a willingness to want to do anything he can, regardless of how much he's in shape physically, as put together to help his team win. I get all of that. The thing is, Josh, you mentioned the shooting splits. They were not nearly as good as we were expecting. To me, it's some of the other pieces to his game as well, that if you go back and watch the high school tape, he just hasn't been able to show a level of improvement from where he was at then to ultimately what he's going to be able to come in and do in the NBA level now, right? He's not a high-level playmaker out of pick-and-roll sets. He's not a high-level passer, in my opinion, to begin with. There are plenty of defensive concerns in terms of how he goes about finishing at the basket. It's more so the angles that he takes and the way he looks to finish at the basket. He doesn't hunt for contact. He doesn't want to go up into somebody and take that closer angle. He wants to take wide angles, and he wants to try and kiss it off the glass. And I get, if you have touch, if you're a guard who has that type of touch and you look for those shots and you can make them, that's fantastic. But he also didn't make a lot of his runners, his floaters. So there's all these different aspects to his game that I'm looking at as a negative. And then if the shot really isn't there, if he's not as versatile of a shooter as we think he is, what are we pointing to as a positive with his game to where he's going to come in his rookie year and make an impact and earn minutes and really play a significant role for a team? Now, that's not giving him for lack of a better term, a death sentence on his career or anything like that, right? But at the same time, why would I invest high draft capital like a lottery pick in someone who I'm not even confident when they're going to be able to come in and impact my team? And I think that's more so why he's fallen on a lot of big boards.
Well, especially in a draft like this, where, you know, in the terms of the top end talent and the depth of the top end talent, it seems significantly higher than what it is in previous years. So you could make an argument maybe in previous years that at pick 9 or 10 it would make sense to try Nick Smith, but in this draft probably not. And you want to talk about, you know, what does he do? Like if you go to Tankathon and click on a player's profile, they have this thing called stats, strengths and weaknesses with green pluses and red minuses, and his page is just all minuses. The only positive is age and no turnovers. Everything else is just a negative, which is a horrible look. So is he just a player, like you talked about, you know, if the passing doesn't come and the shooting doesn't come, like without a position, like without a role? He's not good enough shooter as a shooting guard. He's not a good enough passer as a point guard. Is he just sort of sitting in between where there's just no real role at this point?
He's not really locked into a position one way or the other. And in some cases, we could point to that to a player and say that's a strength if we can label them as a combo guard. But at the same time, if there's no real strengths one way or the other, and your issue is you just don't have enough experience right now to come in and impact the NBA game at a high level, and you need to get reps somewhere, that just comes back to, again, you know, how long is that going to take? You know, how long is it going to take for him to be more comfortable playing at the speed at the NBA game when he struggled to keep up with the speed and looked a little erratic and out of place at the college level, right? We're talking about making essentially 2 jumps up because he didn't really get a lot of playing time in college. So, I mean, you know as well as I do, Josh, you watch a lot of NBA basketball because of what you do, the pace of the game, the speed of the game, the physicality, all those adjustments. If you can't make that jump in college, how long is it going to take you to make that jump in the NBA?
That's a great transition to the next thing that I was going to ask, because I talked about this on my mock draft yesterday, and we can talk about him coming in as a number one recruit, or however you want to view it, depending on what service you're looking at. And people go, well, yeah, bank on that. And I said, well, when was the last time like a top 5 high school recruit that sucked in college? And the two that really come to mind to me are Cam Reddish and Nasir Little. They didn't suck, but they weren't particularly good. People go, oh yeah, we'll just see. Like they came in as this high school recruit, but it didn't happen. Like, what are they now? They're both fighting for reserve minutes on the same team in the NBA 3 years into their career. Like, that high school pedigree, and the other name I brought up was Scal Labissiere. Like, cool, where's that bloke playing now? Like, he's nowhere. So, I can't think of an example, and you would probably know this more than me, of these guys that come in with high-profile, top 5 high school recruit-type players who struggle in college but then turn into big-time NBA players. I couldn't think of one, and I'm sure there is one, but I couldn't think of one.
So not the college level, Josh, but I was literally thinking about this 20 minutes before we started recording a podcast, so much so to where I put out a tweet on Twitter, and I said, who would you rather have prospect-wise coming into their draft? Nick Smith Jr. or Jaden Hardy? Jaden Hardy also struggled in a professional league, in the G League, right? Struggled shooting the basketball, and a lot of people knocked him for that. They wanted to look at his game and sort of pick it apart and say, well, if he didn't do this within this time frame, why am I investing a lottery pick in him when he had other strengths to his game to point to, right? He's built much better than Nick Smith is, right? I trust him finishing around the basket much more than I do Nick Smith. I trust him to put a body on someone and hang defensively more so right now than I do Nick Smith. So regardless if some of the high-level playmaking stuff doesn't come around for him, he did prove that he could knock down shots, especially in February and March last year in the G League. And now you look at him this year, his shot chart, no matter where he played, Josh, it was all red all the time. So Hardy's someone who I kept a lottery grade on my personal big board, but the NBA clearly didn't feel that way, and he went in the second round. So what about Nick Smith game makes it jump out so that he should go ahead of someone like Hardy if that's where Hardy went? That's kind of where I'm at with how I feel about Nick Smith's stock.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because the other thing I think with the G League Ignite is we've got years and years and years of like college production, but we don't really know how to view the G League production, the extension to the full NBA line, and it's going to get even worse this season. We're trying to look at overtime elite, but like we don't know. We don't have we've got 6 players or something that have come from the G League into the NBA. We don't know how it all translates. We don't know what struggles are real, or if that's a red flag or a green flag or whatever it is. But in college, we tend to know that. We've got years and years and decades of experience with seeing, well, if you can't do this in college, then you're in real trouble. Like we've got that experience, and that's a really interesting thing. So before we move on to the next player, which is of course the number 1 player in the draft, that's Victor Wembanyama. Before we move on to him, we talk about you being down on Nick Smith. So first round, is he not even that high for you? Is he like not a top 20 player? Where do you think he is?
So he's still on the back end of the first round for me right now, but he's a player who I could see myself dropping him into like that early second round range. It really is going to all depend on who's choosing at the back end of that first round, like that top, 20 to 30 range, who is confident that they have the developmental resources in place to actually devote the amount of time that Nick Smith needs in the right setting to bring the best out of him and give him the reps that he clearly needs. But because of that uncertainty, because I feel that he needs a certain level of investment made into him, and he's not just a plug and play, I know what I'm going to get from him, that's just even more so that even taking him at the back end of the first round, there's still some level of associated risk when you have plenty of other intriguing options, older options that you can look at in that same range and go, I know what I'm going to get from that guy if I bring him into my organization and draft him.